Welcome to Law Subscribed. This is your dedicated news source for all things subscriptions and the law. My name is Matthew Kurbis. I'm the subscription attorney, and I believe subscriptions can help bridge the access to justice gap and incentivize attorneys to modernize and scale their practice like never before. In this episode, I interview Jim Hart. Jim is one of the attorneys who just gets it when it comes to innovation in the legal profession. His story is one where he keeps leaning into what's working, and it's no surprise to this audience that he landed on subscriptions and flat fees. Jim is the first attorney that I've had on this podcast who also monetizes content creation on YouTube and through productized legal services. He also shares how he was able to pivot to a new practice and from litigation to transactional in a relatively short period of time. Longtime listeners know I'm now releasing videos of my podcast to Substack subscribers, even the free ones. Go to lawsubscribe.com and join the Substack using the form on the homepage. I'm speaking at ABA Tech Show in Chicago this February of 2024, where I'll be presenting on generative AI and the subscription model and podcasting for lawyers. You can register at techshow.com. Thank you to my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, links to both in the show notes, more on them later. And remember, use the code LawSubscribed when signing up. It lets them know you found out about them from the podcast, you get 10% off, and it really supports the show. Another way to support the show is to share it with someone you know. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing said is legal, ethical, or financial advice. Without further delay, here's the episode. Jim Hart, an attorney doing things differently. I'm so happy to have you on Law Subscribed.
Thank you so much for having me, Matthew. I appreciate it.
So I've had a chance to look at all the fun stuff that you're doing. It's great to not be one of the only few content creator lawyers out there, and there's another one doing things different than I'm doing it. But for those who haven't come across your stuff yet, go ahead and give yourself an introduction to my listeners.
Yeah, so my name is Jim Hart. I am a lawyer. I'm currently living in Lisbon, Portugal, and practicing law remotely. I've got a North Carolina-based law firm. We do primarily trademarks and intellectual property work. We also help startups and founders to grow their business and all the legal things that come with building a startup from nothing. I have a YouTube channel with about 160,000 subscribers on it, talking about legal tips and strategies that people can use for their business. And yeah, I don't know what else you need to know, but that's a very bare bones if you leave it at that.
And you also have productized legal
right.
products, right? One Stop
Yeah,
Legal.
I'm sorry. Forgot. Yes, I have another business called One Stop Legal where entrepreneurs and coaches and consultants and different people like that can get all the legal tools and templates they need for their business. And those are all on a flat fee basis. So they can basically order those directly online and download those documents for their use.
Sounds to me, Jim, like you're living the dream. You're living in another country. You're working remote full time. The time zone change. I'm curious to know about what the time zone difference is like. But then you've got also these productized legal services. So, how long have you even been practicing law for, and what gave you the idea to try this thing?
So I've been practicing law since 2004. I first got licensed in Florida. We practiced in Florida for several years and then ultimately moved to North Carolina. I took the bar exam there, got licensed in 2010 in North Carolina. We were in North Carolina basically from 2009. So I took the February 2010 bar exam. So we moved there in 2009 and was in Florida until 2022, about a year ago. And we moved to Lisbon. Then we are actually, you say living the dream. We're probably going to be moving back to North Carolina by the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. My wife is actually in another room right now packing boxes. So we're probably going to be coming back. But yeah, so that's kind of like the abbreviated version of what's been happening. I got into building my law firm the way it is right now in 2016. I started my YouTube channel and didn't really think much of it. I just was trying to answer people's questions in videos and try and be fun and witty and, hopefully do it in a way that wasn't just bland and boring. And I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to the subscribers. I wasn't looking to gain subscribers. I wasn't looking to monetize on YouTube or anything like that. And then I stopped posting videos and I came back to the channel maybe a year or two later and I noticed I had like 10,000 subscribers. And I thought, well, that could be something. And so I turned on AdSense revenue and it immediately was making, several $100s a month. And I thought, okay, well, let's see what we can do with this. And so I started posting more regular content to YouTube. I started getting calls from clients that wanted to hire my firm for help with LLCs and their small businesses. And that's kind of where we've gone from there. So I had a family law firm for ever since I can remember. And I shut that all down. It took several years to do it, but I shut that all down at the end of 2021 and then just went all in with the business and transactional and trademark and those type of things, contracts, started the one stop legal store. And yeah, and that's what we've been doing ever since. And so, yeah, it's been quite a crazy road. I also have, I should mention, in terms of productized services, I do have a membership course that people can join that gives them access to a course I created on how to, you know, build and protect, legally speaking, your business. And it's got some other courses and materials in there. And I think people pay like $97 a month or something to be in that. And we do weekly coaching calls and things of that sort. So that's another little side thing that I've got going on. But for the most part, the bulk of my time is spent working on trademarks and helping startups and small businesses.
I have so much to ask you, but let's start with this.
Okay.
You're licensed in Florida and North Carolina, but you
Yes.
have this successful YouTube channel, and I got to imagine you're getting a lot of inbound from
Mhm.
people who are not living in or operating a business in North Carolina and Florida. Is that sort of where the one-stop legal came from as far as like restrictions on multi-jurisdictional practice, or how have you been handling that multi-jurisdictional concern? Because it's really a gray area as far as like the non-court related type legal work for clients.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm not sure it's a huge gray area. I think it's pretty clear what the rules of professional responsibility say about that. And so but this is the way I've attacked it. So I guess to start with, when I first built the YouTube channel, when I first started the YouTube channel, I thought, okay, I can either do a YouTube channel about family law in North Carolina, or I can do it about something that's going to reach a broader audience in all 50 states. And so that was the initial rationale for me saying, okay, I'm going to talk about LLCs because that's going to have a much more broader appeal than family law in North Carolina. Plus, I don't really want to do family law anymore. So it doesn't make sense for me to build a YouTube channel around that. And so that's exactly what I did. And I intentionally was broad. So I talk in very broad terms. I'm not giving legal advice, obviously, on the channel. I don't give legal advice in the comments. I try and steer away from that. And then when people hire me, so the question was, okay, people started to call my firm. So what can I do? How can I monetize that? And basically, what I did do is as I looked around and I realized I did some research. And I realized that the mere act of forming an LLC is not giving legal advice, right? It's a merely ministerial act that a lawyer can do. You can form an LLC in any state you want. If somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I want to form an LLC," that's not legal advice. You're not talking to them about state law issues. You're not doing anything like that. So if somebody comes to me and says, "I want to form an LLC in California, for example, or Ohio, or anywhere, Texas," we can do that. It's not a problem because I found a company that I partnered with a company, and I'm not going to say who it is because I know they're not taking any other lawyers at this point, and you probably could figure it out by looking at my website. But so I partnered with this company to try and basically have them do all the LLCs. So I basically collect the information and then they process the LLCs. And that's the way we've done it, and it's worked out pretty well. And so that's the way I get around those multi-jurisdictional issues. The other way we get around that is by virtue of what I do. So I do trademark law. That's a federal practice area. I talk about trademarks on my channel. You just have to be licensed in a state. You don't have to be licensed in the same state where your client is. And so that's how I deal with that issue. In terms of the startups and the companies that are growing and things like that, a lot of business and corporate lawyers help people in states other than where they're located. And again, this is a function of how are you helping them specifically? So if you're helping them to draft, privacy policies for their website and terms of service, and you're helping them with their trademarks and different things like that, there's a lot of things that can be done that are either federal law or not state specific law that you can help them with. So you're not really getting into those multi-jurisdictional issues. If somebody calls me and says, "Hey, I need to do, I've got a lawsuit against somebody in Texas," I'm going to say no. I'm going to try and find them another lawyer. And if somebody calls and they have another type of issue like that, I'm basically going to refer those cases out. And again, as outsourced general counsel, that's kind of what we do. And there's a section in the professional responsibility rules that talks about general counsel. And if you're giving general advice to a counsel or to a company, and you don't necessarily have to be licensed in that state. And so as long as you know where the boundaries are in terms of not giving state specific advice on things that you're not licensed to practice and referring out when necessary, I'm not as concerned about that.
I mean, after hearing you describe it, I also see a lot less gray area from the way that you described it, Jim. And also, like LegalZoom, right, can help people incorporate anywhere. So, if they're not a lawyer, that's obviously not like legal services specific per se, right?
Yep.
So, I think I got to ask you a compound question because I think they're related.
Okay.
But family law, notorious for billing tons of hours, right? So, like, obviously, billing time there, then pivoting to other practice areas. I want to know, when you pivoted, why, like, what'd you do about billing time to move towards these alternative fee arrangements that you use? But also, how did you manage that, like moving into a new practice area? Were you doing it already? Did you have to take a bunch of CLEs? So, like, tell me about that transition, both in terms of practice area and how you were charging your clients.
Well, first of all, when I was doing family law, I was charging flat. I had started to transition to flat fees.
Mm-hmm.
So I had been doing family law long enough that I knew how long it took to do a case. I knew how much time it took for me to prepare for and conduct a mediation. I knew how much time it took for me to prepare for and conduct a hearing. I knew how much time it took for me to prepare a lawsuit or draft a settlement agreement or do different things like that. I had all that data. And so I was able to determine what an appropriate flat fee would be for the client if they wanted to hire me to do one of those things. And that's what I did. So I was actually billing flat fees for family law before I made the transition. And clients loved it because clients knew that there was a certainty to it. They knew that, they were paying me X amount of money. It might be a little bit more than an hourly fee attorney was going to charge them, because when you go into an hourly fee attorney and they're like, yeah, give me a trust deposit, $1,000, $2,500, something like that. And then the clock starts ticking, right? So what I was doing is I would say, okay, well, you need to pay me an initial, the fee might be 5,000 or 7,500, but that covers this package of services that's going to get you through this stage of the case. And clients love that because they knew they didn't have to pay any more fees. Now, did I get burned sometimes? Yeah, sometimes I got burned. But were there other situations where, I resolved the case really, really fast and got a big fee? Yes, that happened too. But in the end, it kind of averages out because, like I said, I had the data. I knew what an appropriate fee would be. So, but in terms of the transition from family law to doing more corporate work and trademarks and intellectual property and startups, I would say it happened when I started that YouTube channel. So I started that YouTube channel and I wasn't really thinking about what was going to happen in terms of inbound calls, but I started getting inbound calls for this type of work. And it was kind of where I'm doing this much family law and this much corporate. And then it kind of slowly shifted. And once I got through that tipping point, that's when I said, okay, I just need to stop taking all family law cases. I built a relationship with another family law attorney in Raleigh. I started sending him all my cases. We tried to come up with an arrangement where he was going to buy that portion of my firm, or I was going to become like of counsel or something like that. And we hired an attorney, an ethics counsel to kind of make sure that was going to happen. Okay. She basically said, no, North Carolina's, kind of a messed up state when it comes to those type of things. And I can't really think of an ethical way for you to do that. So short of him buying my website, in which he didn't want to do, I basically just said, okay, well, I'm going to let the practice die. And so that's what happened. I let the practice die and kept the website, and which is now I've transitioned to a corporate website. And and so I set the cutoff date and said, this is the date. I'm not taking any more cases after this date. And I didn't. And that's the way it happened. But it wasn't like one day I'm taking these cases and and no other stuff and just switched. It wasn't like a light bulb. It doesn't happen that way. It's more of a transition. That's the way it happened for me.
And for the audio only listeners, this much family law and then this much trademark law, that is, he was miming the scales with his hands,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
scales of it. So So then, like, how did you learn it though? Like, is this just you're leaning on things you learned in law school? You signed up for
No.
one of these CLE platforms, like, because lawyers are like they when they are thinking about moving away from billable hours, are also thinking about what other practice areas could I pivot into. So I think my listeners would be really interested to know how you got prepared to start doing those new legal services that weren't family law.
So, I mean, so I basically, I went to CLEs. I went to the North Carolina bar and I said, okay, what CLEs do we have on trademarks, intellectual property, privacy, contracts, all those type of things. And I went to as many as I could. And that's basically it. And then you just start taking the work and you start doing the work. And even now there's Facebook groups with trademark lawyers in them where they talk and share issues they're coming up with. So it's a pretty collegial bar from that standpoint. You have to be careful. It doesn't happen often, but I have had situations where I've received like we filed a trademark and then you receive a cease and desist from another company, usually a larger company who's trying to keep you from using a trademark they feel is deceptively similar to theirs. And you have to look in those groups and make sure that the counsel for that other company is not actually, in the group with you. It's not as cut and dry as like the plaintiff's bar and insurance defense. It's not like that. So,
Right.
but yeah, that's basically it. You take the cases and you kind of learn what you're doing and you figure it out as you go. And yeah, and thankfully for me, I things went okay. If I ran into a situation where I didn't know what I was doing, I looked for guidance from somebody else that was already doing it. And yeah, I haven't had any issues. Knock on wood.
Right. And regarding like getting up to speed relatively quickly, I would hope, were there like legal tech tools that you were using, like this other company that helps you do the LLCs? Like, did you find tech tools or document databases or automation platforms, like anything like that to help you speed things along?
So with trademarks, everything is online. Like the whole trademark world is online. So you have an account with the US Patent and Trademark Office and all the forms, anything you need to do, it's like administrative law. They've got, and it's all fillable through their portal. So you don't really need to worry about getting forms. And if you do need forms, like you've got the whole trademark database at your disposal and you can pull up the file of any trademark that's ever been filed. Well, within reason. I think they cut it off around like 20 years ago or something like that, because before that they weren't putting all this online. But yeah, so that all the documents, all the forms are there. You can find them if you really look. And then, like I said, recently, this did not happen. Like, I don't know how long ago this group was formed, but there's a Facebook group with trademark attorneys in it. There's probably a couple. There's just one that I'm in that I use a lot. And people are always posting questions, and it's a very collegial group. The other thing I would say is, and this was not originally the case, but recently there's been other software vendors that have created software specifically for trademark attorneys that talks to the USPTO database through, I don't know how they do it, through some sort of API or coding or something. Mm-hmm. And so now I have docketing software that I use that it reminds me about deadlines, and you can click into the forms directly through the software. So, but this didn't exist. I mean, this stuff is relatively new. This stuff didn't exist, even 2 or 3 years ago. So, and now for searching, that was the biggest issue, was doing searches. And now you've got all these AI assisted search tools and things like that that can go through the USPTO database, and they're pretty good at determining if there's going to be any conflicts. That was probably the biggest part. That was probably the biggest learning curve for me, was how to do appropriate search. And I'm still not completely sure I'm the best at it, but I think I'm pretty good. I think I'm getting a good eye for it now, and I can see if there's something that I think is too similar. I can pretty much identify that at this point.
I like to tell clients, or if I'm ever speaking to an audience of I hate the term non-lawyers, but whatever that term could be that's not so pejorative, that law is more art than science. Like, it's like And at the end of the day, if there's a dispute and you file a lawsuit, you get a bunch of random people deciding the outcome, or then a panel of judges. Like, it's an art. It's not
Oh,
really
yeah.
black and white. So I hear you there. Something that I'm sure my listeners have been like waiting for is like, how does this guy charge his clients now specifically, right? Like, why have Jim on the podcast? Well, I'm on your website right now, hawthornelaw.net. You have a
Mhm.
services tab, and you are part of the exclusive group of lawyers, of which I am part of as well, that actually puts their prices on their website. I think we're up to almost
Yeah.
20 lawyers that do that. We ought to start a database of like lawyers who are actually transparent with their pricing, and we'd be on there, as would I think about half my attorney guests. But looking here, you offer several flat fee prices for just one-off services, but then you also have some subscriptions like your business maintenance package, an annual subscription. And we could talk prices if you want. Prices are always subject to change. I try to keep these interviews evergreen, so anyone knows listening in the future that prices might be different now. But basically, it's an annual subscription that they pay per month. I'm
Mhm.
seeing the business maintenance package. And then you also have something called the trademark watch service, which is only $99 a year. And it looks like it's really easy. You have maybe a Stripe integration set up on your website where they could just sign up and subscribe. Super simple for $99 a year for trademark search. That's
Mhm.
pretty incredible. So my question for you is how did you come to this idea? Because like that is like I'm like, why did you think subscription for these types of things specifically?
Well, I mean, I think just trademarks just in general lends itself really well to that because you people will have to pay a flat fee to do their trademark, but once they have their trademark set up, there's a lot of stuff that has to happen behind the scenes. I mean, you have to file renewals, you have to make sure nobody's infringing on that trademark, and you have to do all these things. And these are not things that require a lot of active work on the part of anyone that's doing them, but they do need to happen. And so there is, I can sign up with a service that so basically the way it works is I'm not going in there and like searching the USPTO database on a daily basis for people that hire me for their watch service, right? But I do have services that I work with that I use where I pay them an annual fee or a monthly fee for searches and things. And so, it only takes me a couple of clients that sign up for this where I can put them into the service, and if a client was to do this on their own, they'd be spending a lot more than $100 a year.
Right.
They'd be spending thousands of dollars a year to do this. But for me, because I use the service every single day with doing searches and doing other things, even though it costs me thousands of dollars a year to use the service, I'm using it all the time. And oh, by the way, they can also do all my trademark watching for me, and that's unlimited. So I don't know if it's unlimited. There might be a cap on it, but I haven't hit it yet. So
Mhm.
it just makes sense. So I'm providing a nice benefit for the client, and I'm doing something that they could never get that cheaply if they were doing it on their own. So, and then in addition, if something comes up, they have me to count on where they can go to me and I can talk to them about what the issue is and what the appropriate response should be.
Right. It's arbitrage. I mean, it's arbitrage at its best. And like this is where I see the future of like generative AI going with how people will interface with it for legal services. I don't think it's going to make sense for there to be like this, do not pay style generative AI chatbot that answers all your legal questions and is like skirting the line between unlicensed practice of law and not. I see the future as there's going to be these generative AI chatbot like experiences, because I really don't like lawyer chatbots at all personally, that law firms will subscribe to and train using their data and client information securely, and then
Mhm.
be able to then they're subscribing to that service, and now their clients, as part of their subscription to that law firm, get access to that legal generative AI chatbot. And I see a very similar thing for the future of Gen AI and legal services. What do you think about something like that? And are you using generative AI at all in anything that you do?
So if when you say generative AI, I assume you're meaning like ChatGPT or other. I mean, I've seen it. It's like all over the place. I have a subscription to Thompson West, not Westlaw. It's not Westlaw in particular, but they have like a subscription for contracts and different type of things that you can use if something comes up and they have like a national thousands of forms in their library.
Right.
And they're now putting AI into that service. And so I actually need to schedule a call with one of the trainers there to figure out exactly how to use it in my law firm. But yeah, I've used things like ChatGPT. Now I haven't done it to like cite cases that don't exist. But what I'll do is I can take, basically if I get a letter from another attorney that says, hey, you've got to deal with issue 1, 2, 3, and 4, I can copy and paste those issues into the AI and say, hey, give me some sample arguments that I could use to deal with this. And it's a good starting point. I look at it more of like a brainstorming tool, like, right? It's giving me ideas of things that I can use to maybe draft a reply brief or draft a reply letter to that attorney. But I'm not having it draft the letter itself. And so, yeah, so I've used GPT for that. There's some other search services that trademark attorneys can use. I have not signed up for those yet because the ones that I like, I like. But I've noticed that, for example, the one service that I use for most of my searches, they actually have an AI feature kind of built in. So now when you check out, you can check the box and say, do you want AI to give you an analysis of this? And you check the box. And then when you go out, it'll say, hey, is this search term, is it likely to be denied? Are there other issues with it that you need to be aware of? And it'll give you kind of the AI analysis. Is it perfect? No. Do I always agree with it? No. But it's interesting and it's there. And if in the case that it's good, I'll include it in the report for the client. But I think at this point, it's still a little premature. I don't think it's up to quite the level that it needs to be for it to be meaningful. But hey, they're starting to incorporate it into the searches.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear. That's the first that I'm learning of it. Let's talk about One Stop Legal because it's really interesting to me. I've come across a few lawyers who are doing this, productized thing and competing with LegalZoom, but for their markets and for what services they could offer. When I went solo, I pivoted from mostly litigation to a transactional-only practice. I did not have a database of documents to automate. That's why a business and employment legal document database and automation tool like 650 is super useful. I can rely on the quality of the documents in 650's database since they're putting excellent legal minds to work curating and updating their documents and automations over time. When you're not billing by the hour, outsourcing and efficiency matters, and 650 can help you scale your practice to get high-quality documents drafted in less time. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at 650.com and when being onboarded to get 10% off. If you're not a business and employment attorney or you have your own documents that you'd prefer to use, then my next sponsor, Gavel, is the automation tool for you. Gavel allows you to build shareable, client-facing workflow and document automations. In other words, Gavel helps you create a legal practice where attorneys can monetize the value they bring clients in productized form and scale via subscriptions and flat fees. Use the code LAWSUBSCRIBED at gavel.io to get 10% off an annual subscription. There's no one right way to automate and scale your practice, but with one or both of my sponsors, 650 and Gavel, you can take your subscription law firm to the next level. Links to both in the show notes. Now back to the show. So I'd like to know, how's it going? What are some things that you're doing with it? Why are you doing it? And why aren't you using the subscription model yet?
Okay. Where do you want to go first? So how is it doing? It's doing okay. I mean, I'm not going to retire off it at this point. There's another attorney that did actually build like her entire. Do you know who I'm talking about? Do you know what was it? I can't even remember.
There's Legally Set is one.
No, I've never heard of that one.
The Legal Page is another one.
I've heard of her. Yeah.
So I don't know who the other one is.
No, okay. It was the Contract Shop.
Yeah.
And the attorney that started that actually sold it for an undisclosed amount. And now she posts videos about why you should be doing your business on TikTok. So I don't know if she's retired or what she's doing. I'm not at that point yet. I think that she had really done a good job of marketing that website, of building it up, of blogging, of creating a lot of content and things like that. And she was focusing only on that. Obviously, for me, that's not my focus. My focus is still on my trademark clients and I guess you could say my startup business type of clients. That's my focus and where I'm devoting most of my time. So One Stop Legal is kind of like a little side project. When I built that, I had a VA that was helping me that did a lot of the basically what it was is I created all these contracts. I'll tell you exactly how it came up. I created all these contracts for my clients and for the legal course that I put out. And I was trying to find another way to put them out there where I could sell them and generate some profit from that. And so basically that's what we did. We just put them all up on this website for One Stop Legal. But it's not optimized very well for the search engines. It does get some traffic. I generate, in the hundreds. We're not in the thousands of dollars each month, but we generate in the hundreds each month in sales pretty passively. So it's there, and we might do some more with it. But I think it's a helpful tool, and a lot of people that have used the contracts have been very thankful for that, and they like the contracts. So that's kind of why I built it and how it's doing. And so then your last question, I think, was why not subscription? And the reason why I actually thought about that, and there's another attorney, and I don't remember who it is or what her name is, but evidently she was going to do a similar type of thing and put her contracts out there, but do it as a subscription model. The issue is with that, to make that work, I would have to charge a pretty high subscription price, which I'm guessing most people wouldn't pay, because that's not the way subscriptions work. I mean, for the most part, you're paying less in a monthly fee for a longer period of time, as opposed to paying. So instead of paying like $500 now for a contract, maybe you'd be paying $50 a month, and then your hope would be that they would stick with you for at least 10 months. Right. And I think that for what I'm doing with that, my concern and I don't mean to be cynical, because I'm usually a pretty optimistic, glasses half full type of guy, but I also know that, human nature is human nature. And I could see a situation where people got in, signed up for a month, downloaded, 5, 10 contracts, and then canceled their service. So they get $3,000 worth of contracts and they're done. The other thing I will say about that is, if they did want to do that, I do have a online membership for $97. Actually, it's $147 a month now, where people will get access to all those contracts too. I don't think they get all the contracts that are on One Stop Legal, but they do get access to most of them. And so I guess theoretically I am kind of doing it now that we bring it back to that. I'm just not doing it overtly on One Stop Legal.
Right. So, okay. So the membership is through the law firm, not through One Stop Legal.
No, the membership is through, I have a separate LLC. It's called Hart Digital Media. And my membership is through Hart Digital Media. I'm not giving legal advice. We talk about online business. We talk about, different things like that, growing and building your business. But it has a DIY legal course built in that I don't, I'm not giving advice on the information in that course, but it's got all those templates and things like that people might need. Right. So one of my first interviews with Natalie Knowlton of now Access to Justice Ventures, one of the things she was talking about is, and she's not a practicing lawyer, she's more like in the innovation space and how in closing the access to justice gap, she talked about how lawyers can sell legal information and not legal advice, right? Like that was one of her big things, and it still is. And so that's just a way that you're doing that. That's how I'm doing that.
Right. So I do feel like then, like that there are ways to do it. And before we had this conversation, I did not realize that that's how your membership worked, that you get access to at least some of those documents, because that's it. It's just like, I don't see that option on that website.
It's not. It's on. I've got too many websites. I think that's the lesson there. I've got too many websites. No, it's if you go to obfoundations.com, that's where you'll see it.
Got it. Links to all these in the show notes, folks. So the way that your website, though, is set up reminds me of one of the sponsors of my podcast, 650. And based on this point in the interview, they've already heard the ad for that. But they have their products, employment docs, business docs, privacy docs, and then they have a document marketplace. But each one of those 3 options, you could subscribe to those, or you could buy them individually in the document marketplace. Well, your website is really well set up under the Shop by Business, right? Business coaches, entrepreneurs, freelancers, photographers, influencers. So each one of those, just like with 650, can be its own individual subscriptions, right? Get access to these. And depending on how you price it, which is, maybe the cost of one document or two or three documents for the subscription, for the monthly
Mhm.
subscription. You have to figure out, what's the right way to price that. You may get people who would have never paid you a cent, and it's still not costing you anything, right? But
Yeah.
now they're subscribed. Maybe, it depends on, maybe you hire somebody to do this or you invest in this, because something that 650 does, the value of their subscription is, since this is their only business, they are updating these documents all the time. There's a new law that's passed for privacy. They update it, right? So like that's like the value of their subscription there. But what you could also do is if somebody were subscribed to entrepreneurs, they also get like a 10% or 15% discount on anything outside of their subscription that's also offered on the other subscription options, right? So there's a way for you to, they subscribe to one, they get all the documents in that little bucket, but then they get discounts in the other buckets. And I'm pretty sure 650 also offers a all you can eat subscription for all of their things as well.
Mm.
And that's a high ticket item, if somebody
Okay.
wants access to all of that. And it's a relatively new-ish business model with the terms of productized legal services. Like there's no one right way to do it. But if it's already not a thriving business, you might want to do an A/B test. Like here's website A, here's website B, see how many people are willing to subscribe to this thing. And also if they subscribe, some might subscribe and unsubscribe. And since it's not a law firm, you're still a lawyer, but it's not a law firm. So what you can do business-wise is different. If somebody subscribes and forgets to unsubscribe, that's sort
Yeah.
of that's on them at that point. It's not a law firm. So it's earned, it's earned business. So it's
Okay.
just something to think about. What do you think about all that?
All right. So I'm intrigued, but I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I'm just going to throw this back at you because I am really genuinely curious about your thoughts on this, and it does have a lot of things going through my mind right now, and I might have to look at 650 and what they're doing. So my question to you is, how do you respond to my very negative worldview? I might add, and I'll freely admit it, it's a negative worldview, and it's probably a fear that a lot of people would have doing something like this, where people would sign up for 1 month, get all the stuff, and then cancel without adding additional. See, I look at a subscription as you have to continue adding value on a month-to-month basis. You have to give people reason to look at that bill and say, okay, yeah, I'll continue paying that charge each month.
You are right. And episode 33 with Robbie Kelman Baxter, who's just a industry like subscription expert, not specific to law, she talks about the forever promise, right? So yeah, so what are you giving them? What what is your value proposition that you are promising them in exchange for that monthly payment, right? So you are right. But ultimately it is access to these things. And you will, no matter what, have people who subscribe and unsubscribe to whatever subscription business you have, even if you have a really good forever promise, right? It's going to happen. They're not
Mhm.
perfect clients, but they also maybe never would have been your client. They never would have bought one or two documents anyway. So like you're not necessarily losing business. You're just getting business you wouldn't have gotten before. And I'm sure, are they milking it a little bit? But this goes back to your family law example. Some cases were underscoped. Some cases
Mhm.
were overscoped. It's all going to balance out in the long run.
That's
And then
true.
you're generating at least some of these people who buy your the subscription will be forever subscribers and they'll be super happy with it. And if you are generating more recurring revenue through that business, just like with your YouTube channel, you're going to see that as I need to invest more time here because people are subscribing and they're staying subscribed. And that could
Yeah,
very quickly become the way that you generate most of your money. And now you are updating the documents because
that's a good
you're getting
point.
a boatload of subscribers.
And
So yeah,
adding more documents.
and adding more documents. Yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. That's not, I haven't thought of it that way, but I think you're absolutely right. And the way I look at that, of what you just said, is I think, well, I've got subscriptions right now that I haven't canceled, even though I probably should. Like I have a recurring task in my task list every single month. So I've got a database that one of my old employees helped me put together of every single product that I use in my law firm and my digital media company that has a recurring or annual subscription and when the renewals are due. And I look through that every single month and say, okay, is there anything in here that I can cancel or get rid of? And inevitably, there's always stuff that I am no longer using that I could get rid of, but I don't. Why? Because the price has gone up and I'm afraid I might have to go back to it at some point. So I might as well just keep it because otherwise I'd have to pay the higher price. or for some other reason. There's always some BS reason why you don't cancel when you probably should. Fear
Yeah,
of missing out. Maybe it's FOMO.
right. And as law firms, we have to be very careful with using subscriptions in that way. Like things have to be earned fees based on the particular, like, what are you providing in exchange? Every local jurisdiction's ethics apply, right, in that type of situation. But since this is a legal adjacent business that is not a law firm, those concerns are less present. And as long as you're genuinely providing value, even if it's just access to documents, that might be
Yep.
updated, some people will stay subscribed to that. And you'll get abusers of the system, but I think that people, if it's priced right, I think that people generally will not do that on the whole, like the
Yeah.
most people who subscribe.
And I think, and I said the really the question is it priced right? Right.
Mhm.
So, if you're looking at what one document, costs, where does the pricing fall in? How do you determine, what that price might be? Is it, someone told me once that, if the product itself, costs, let's say $100, then if you're going to do a subscription for that product, then and add some additional value to it, then it's like something like, that divided by 10. So the price of the subscription would be $10 a month. I don't know if that's right or not, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. But that's kind of so if like, for example, my contracts were, $300 for, one of my contracts, which I think some of them are like $299. Do I charge $30 a month and you get access to all of them? Or do I charge $300 a month? Or do I charge something in between? I don't know what the answer to that is.
Yeah, I think that you can't paint with such a broad brush in terms of, like, it's always 10%. I think context really matters. And I think doing it in this space, in this legal productization space, the consumer doesn't have an expectation of what it is. So I think
Mhm.
you can experiment. And this is why, like, if you could ABC test pricing, if you're able to do that, I know there are some companies that serve startups that help them do A/B testing or ABC testing to see what subscriptions people are signing up for. Like, that would be a thing to do. I personally have changed up my pricing for my legal subscriptions for my law firm a few times and found that, yeah, like, when you modulate pricing, you might see people fall off or a lot more people use it. When I reduced my pricing from $100 a page to $50 a page for subscribers, I got way more people hiring me for signing up to subscribe so they could get $50 a page. So, and I'm making way more money than I was charging $100 a page. So but I feel like I can't charge any less than $50 a page, right? So,
Mhm.
it requires a little bit of flexibility and experimentation, which I think you're comfortable with in light of everything that you're doing.
Mhm.
And I got to check in, and this might make the cutting room floor because I don't know if 650 is still doing this, but it used to be for the cost of one document, you could subscribe to that bucket. And so that way, if somebody's already going to purchase one document, they might as well subscribe. And that was a psychological reason. So
Oh,
they
that's
might,
interesting.
yeah, they might not be doing that anymore. I'll have to check in on them, but I do kind of like that idea because then if they might as well subscribe, sure, they could go in and do all the documents, but something that 650 provides, which yours doesn't, is they have built-in automations. And so they have a preset, like, put in the name of your business, how many employees, what
Oh, I have
states.
that.
So you have the built-in automation. So that in and of itself, being able to automate it is part of the platform and not having to go in and type it in Word or Google Docs, that has value.
Mhm.
So being able to do that for all the documents. So sure, I could go in and download all the documents, but now I need to go set up my automations manually. Like, that's too much work. Being able to have it already automated, that's a different story.
Yeah, I think if I were to go to a subscription, and I'm kind of thinking out loud, but I think for something like that, you would have to make sure that those links. So right now, people buy it and they get the link, right? And it's their link, and that theoretically they could share it with people. They could do other things. I don't think they do because it's in the terms of service that if I find out that you're doing that, then you're out. Not that's a big, you know, stick. I don't know, but you would have to put those links behind some sort of paywall, which means it would almost have to be like a membership that people were signing up for. So that's the way you'd have to do it. And I don't know how to integrate. I'd have to figure out a way to integrate that with Shopify. I'm sure there's a way to do that. The other question I have for you about that, and I think that's a really interesting, because it starts to, again, there's all sorts of ways you could do it. Hey, buy this one contract for $1 and join our subscription, or pay $49 for the contract and just do one off. So you could do things like that. So it's actually a pretty cool idea what you're talking about. So one thing you just mentioned, it had me curious. So when you change the pricing of your subscription, does it affect everybody or only the people that buy going forward?
This is the value of month-to-month subscriptions, right? It's a month-to-month subscription. I do not lock clients in anything more than month-to-month. And according to the terms of engagement, they get notice before any change takes effect or anything else. Now, what I haven't actually, when I have changed my subscription pricing, I have not forced current subscribers at that level to go up or down a level, because I also offer custom subscriptions upon request anyway. Those are just prepackaged builds that I've put out for public consumption on my website to see, like, is this a good fit for me? I also have a little note that says, I'm happy to customize your subscription. So I haven't actually had to do that, but for my flat fee pricing available to subscribers, because what happens if something goes outside the scope of that bundled subscription of legal services?
Which always happens.
It always happens. You go over to a la carte flat fee services, or you could subscribe up to a higher level, right? So that's how I handle it. Now it's complicated because you don't want to throw all this information at them, but you want them to be able to easily access, what the pricing is if they go over or something, right? Or advise them before they do, like, hey, just let you know we've hit the 10 contract threshold this month, or 10 project threshold. For the next one, it's going to be $50 a page, or for the next month, you could go up to the next subscription level where you get 15.
But what about for clients that maybe started with, maybe you put something out there and you had a couple people sign up and then you decide to drop the price, you just drop it for them too?
Well, I would probably let them know, yeah, and I would do that. Now, my software that I'm using makes it very difficult to do that. And Shopify, by the way, I've tried to figure out how to use them for my law practice. I do not think they do what you want them to do. And I have been begging, like, legal tech entrepreneurs to, like, build me the Shopify for law experience, and I haven't seen it yet. So I hope it's out there, though. Like, there are some platforms like, Circle or Thinkific, or like some of these like coaching, training, membership platforms that kind of do this, but it's not really built for legal stuff like that.
No, the one that I use for all my courses is on Kajabi. So the templates are on Shopify. My legal course is on Kajabi. And that's worked okay. I like it. It basically brings everything together into one place. I can do emails and can do all that kind of stuff. And it's all for the non-legal stuff. So I actually segregated my email list also. So for a while, I had this one big email list that I was using for my non-legal and my legal. And I think that there was too much confusion there. And so I basically segregated out. Now I've got 2 separate email lists. But yeah, it's worked okay. May I ask, what do you use how do you manage your subscriptions? Do you have did you just do it like in Stripe, or do you do it some other way?
Hey, who's interviewing who here? No,
Sorry.
I know, but longtime listeners will know. They could always go to MatthewKurbis.com and listen to me speak about my own law firm and other podcasts and stuff. But I use SweetDash integrated with Stripe is how I power my subscription. And SweetDash is just a white label client portal software, and it's fantastic for what it's good at. It does not do everything I want it to do for the way I've designed my law firm. So I am currently I'm always kind of looking for an alternative. I do love it for what it's built for, but it's not built for my ideal law firm. And so I don't know that I'll be with them forever, but so far it's been my good minimum viable portal, my MVP, my minimum viable client portal that powers all that stuff.
Okay.
But for you, Jim, my listeners are more interested in your technology. So as we start to round out the interview here, what are all the subscriptions that you're paying for to power your subscription and flat fee practice?
So I use Clio for assuming the people that are listening are law firm owners. I use Clio is my case management program. My standard for whenever I'm looking at a new piece of software, my basic standard is Does it have an open API? Can I use it with Zapier? And that's the way I look at it. So I have Clio it's funny. I talked to another law firm owner a while back, a good friend of mine, and he made this comment I think is 100% true. He said that Clio is 80% good at like, what did he say? It's like 80% good at like, okay, it's 80% okay at most of the stuff it needs to do. And I think that's pretty accurate. Like, it's in terms of a case management program, you can keep track of your time if you're doing that. I don't do that a whole lot. You can send invoices, it's got payment integration, you can create notes, it's got an event calendar and all those type of things. And you can, if you know what you're doing, you can get reports and stats and different like things like that out of the program. So is it perfect? No, but I've used that. I've used pretty much every other program there is that's out there. And Clio for me just does everything I needed to do and pretty good. So I use that. I use Asana for my task management. Clio's task management is horrible. So I do use Asana for my task management. If somebody hires my law firm for like a trademark matter, for example, basically the workflow is this. They fill out a page on Thrivecart. Thrivecart is great because it's a one-time fee and you don't have to pay for it again. It's not a subscription. And so they check out on Thrivecart. Once they check out, I get a text message saying there's been a new client. It goes through Zapier. Zapier creates a new matter in Clio. Zapier creates a new task, a list of everything we have to do in Asana in a new project. That's all templated. It creates a transaction in QuickBooks Online, so I don't have to worry about that. I mean, it sets them up with an automation in ActiveCampaign and sends out emails to the client in ActiveCampaign to let them know what's happening. It creates a new matter in Case Status. So Case Status is a program that I use to communicate back and forth with my clients. It's really great, and it's good at generating reviews and Net Promoter Score and different things like that. Yeah, so all these things happen on the back end. And then in addition, it automates the sending out of a contract via PandaDoc. So I use PandaDoc for my contracts and for the client to sign. And so it all just kind of fits together. Is it perfect? No, but it does a pretty good job. So that's like I use a bunch of other technology obviously as well, but that's kind of the core of what I do. I use in terms of the front end. I'd recently switched to Squarespace for my website. I thought I would never do that, but it's just easy and simple. And I don't think websites are reliant as much on SEO and things like that now as they are of just pushing stuff to them through my YouTube channel and things like that. And what else? I use YouTube, obviously, and ActiveCampaign to send out emails. And I don't know. Does that answer your question?
I think
and that was
it
a
does.
lot.
But since you're also in the content creation space, are you using any particular hardware like microphone, camera? I know we talked about Crisp is a software you're using.
I use Crisp so Crisp is great. I did not know about Crisp. Crisp, it's crisp.ai, I believe. And the way it works is you sign up for Crisp, and then when you do like a Zoom meeting with somebody. Oh, and I also use Acuity scheduling to get my Zoom meetings, and all my meetings are virtual since I'm here in Portugal. But yeah, Crisp AI has like a robot sit in on the meetings and listens to the whole meeting, transcribes the whole meeting, and then I can go in and grab all the notes from the meeting. It summarizes everything we talked about, and I can just paste that into the Notes app in Clio. And so that's how I use that. Yeah, no, I mean, I can't think of, got a microphone here, and I use Camo for my video, which I think a lot of people are using these days. I use Zoom for video conferences. Yeah, I mean, all the stuff that most people are using, I think.
I got asked that question so much, Jim, that I just made a Google Sheet with all my subscriptions and all my tech stack, hardware and software. Yeah, and then I just added my non-tech subscriptions, so malpractice insurance, phone, internet, all those things. And then I ended up just building out a great little Excel sheet of all my monthly and annual expenses as a result of that.
Oh, yep. I'm not that advanced. I haven't done the legal malpractice insurance yet on that. But the other thing I'll say, I use Grasshopper for my phones for right now. And I have it set up so that if a prospective trademark client calls in, then they get transferred over to Smith AI, which is my virtual receptionist, and they answer the phone for me. And other people just are sent to voicemail. And all of this is relatively inexpensive. I mean, it's all under, $2,000 a month, I would say, everything included. So, it's pretty lean to run a law practice on your own if that's what you're looking to do.
And you don't just go out, if you're listening to this and you haven't started your own practice yet, but you're thinking about it, you don't go out and buy all these things right away and start spending
No,
$2,000 a month. You build
no.
up every little
Yeah.
thing one at a time, starting with like your practice management, and your billing software, right? And like you're automating your subscriptions or flat fees, right? So like those are like you start with the core and then you build on and add on as you get more clients where it makes sense to start spending 2,000 a month. Because I'll tell you, I'm only at like 200 a month for like my tech tools that I'm using right now.
Oh,
But
wow.
I'm using mostly non-legal tech, and I'm paying for things a year in advance because then you
Okay.
usually get a savings on those tech tools. So that's how I'm doing that. But I could certainly easily spend 1 or 2 thousand a month on using like way more tools. Like you listed off, you're using probably twice as many tools as I'm using, Jim, and I refuse to use Clio because it's not built for subscriptions.
Oh, hey, listen, I get it. And in fact, now you've got me curious, and I don't want to give you users the wrong information, but let me just pull up my Airtable. That's a free resource that I use for database. And let's see how that could be from both businesses because I have the law firm and the other one.
Right. Yeah.
But let's see, and I have the template store. So
So running 3
let's-
businesses, your tech stack might be 2 grand a month. Is so
yeah,
like
let me see. For just the law firm, yeah, the law firm, well, and most of it is like related to Smith AI and case status. Those two alone are like $500 a month, but everything else is pretty cheap.
yeah.
And so it works out to it's about $1,000 a month. So it's not quite as much as I thought.
Yeah, with 2 of those subscriptions, which you don't when you're getting started, you don't need a Smith AI type program or a case status. It's as your business grows and scales and you want to outsource and automate some things, that then you bring in those types of products to do that.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking if there's anything else. So I mean, I for those of you who don't know who Lee Rosen is, I'm a member of Rosen Institute, so that's one of my fees. I love him. He's great. I'm friends with him from back when he was in North Carolina. I mean, I included like WP Engine, which is my what do you call it? A hosting platform that I was using, QuickBooks, my docketing software for trademarks, Zapier, Box, yeah, Adobe. So yeah, I mean, nothing crazy, but the top 3 are definitely case status, Smith AI, and Rosen. And that's what you'll find with legal technology in particular is a lot of these companies that are targeting lawyers. They're kind of I mean, I'll be
Yeah,
honest, they're kind of a little nuts with their pricing, right? And they will get you on the phone and they'll want to talk to you and then you'll talk to them and you'll be like, okay, how do I sign up? And they're like, okay, well, listen, I'm going to put together a presentation based on everything I just learned from you about how much I think that you should be paying for this. And then they come back to the presentation and it's something ungodly. And then you like have to negotiate with them. It is a pain in the ass. So I really, if there's one thing I can say, if there's any lawyers out there that are thinking, I want to create legal software, just make it easy for people to just go and sign up through the website. Like, don't hide the ball. And have you come into that too? Have you noticed that?
I have demoed so many legal tech solutions. All of them hide the ball.
Oh,
And
they do.
and they do price gouging for they build their software and they think they're selling to large firms or enterprise clients. But if you're a solo or small attorney, I was just on the Legal Tech Startup Focus podcast, and that was my pitch because those are all legal tech founders. My pitch was build something for the solo small firms that are priced for solo small firm attorneys, and you'll find that we're actually the largest market of potential buyers
Oh
out
yeah.
there. So that's why I'm mostly using non-legal tech. And
Well,
and and that's why frankly, the sponsors of my show are much more affordable legal tech than some of these other platforms out there.
and not only that, but it's like if you're trying to be like a lead generation, like I talked to a company, I will remain unnamed, that was trying to sell me on like their lead generation software. It's like I can do the same thing with Pipedrive for $29 a month. Why would I pay you $1,000 a month because we can do this and this and this. Like, well, so can Pipedrive. Pipedrive can do all of that, and it connects with Zapier. Does yours connect with Zapier? Well, no, but you don't need that. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not interested. Sorry.
The answer, Jim, is because most lawyers are not like you and I or the other guests on my podcast. That's why, because they could get away with that for other lawyers.
Yeah, but it's funny how lawyers will just, no offense to anyone else there that finds themselves into this, but a lot of people will just say, okay, that's how much it's going to cost. Okay, let's do it. We need it. And you probably don't.
Right. So with all of that being said, Jim, my last question for you is a question I ask all my guests, which is a hot dog a sandwich, and why?
A hot dog. Yeah, of course it is. Yes, it's a sandwich.
Why?
Because it's food between two pieces of bun.
Okay. All right. You got it. If
I
we
mean,
sort of we sort of mentioned it already, but where are the places people could find you? Obviously YouTube, anywhere else that people could find you out there?
I would say jameshartlaw.com or hawthornelaw.net. Those are my two main websites. And then if you Google how to start an LLC on YouTube, you'll find me. Or just go to @JimHart on YouTube. And I think that's my handle on YouTube now. So it's pretty easy to find me.
All right. So Jim Hart, thanks again so much for coming on the podcast Law Subscribed.
Thanks for having me, Matthew. I appreciate it.
And that's our show. Thanks again to 650 and Gavel for being sponsors. The best way for others to discover this show is for you to share it with somebody you think would find value from it. Follow me on LinkedIn, since that's where I'm most active on social media, and click the bell towards the top right of my profile to get notified about all of my posts about this podcast and everything else I think is valuable for you to see. To get in touch, message me on LinkedIn or email kurbis@lawsubscribed.com. All links are in the show notes. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.